My manager talked me into this whole Ferrari deal. Let's see, 20% of 48 million is $9 million commission. Ach du Lieber, that's why he did it.
And Norbert, I'll drive the Mercedes for half that much. I can't believe I'm getting a quarter of what Michael does and he still won't smile.
Of course I know who I'm driving for next year, you idiot. Maybe I don't.
No kidding, Flavio. I do look good in blue.
Michael, what do you think about this Indy Lights series in America?
Was the last time. Michael is not taking my seat. I am taking his.
Gary, I'd love to stay, but Eddie Jordan's too cheap. A Bring Back Mansell campaign, yeah?
Won't somebody please buy me out?
Mark, can I have the old uniform?
I never said I would not test. So what you think about Mansell? 43 is not old.
Hey, Yoss, in America, a watch means you've retired, mate. You're kidding me. And when you lap, do I get to qualify?
I love this job. Mwah, mwah.
Frank, I'm serious. Mansell's on the phone.
I get this plate. He gets the bank.
Huh. Flavio thinks he knows real talent.
What? There's someone over here I haven't talked to? See you. Nestled in the Ardennes forest, the Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, one of the best in racing throughout the world, plays host to round 11 of the Formula One World Driving Championship, the Grand Prix of Belgium. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. There is the old Eau Rouge Corner, now the new Eau Rouge Corner, restored to its former glory. Spa sits along the German border, not far from world champion Michael Schumacher's hometown of Kerpen, making this a home race for him. We have had rain on and off throughout practice and qualifying, but seriously, let's get down to business. McLaren will have Mika Hakkinen in 1996, and they will tell us who his number 2 will be October 1st at the Grand Prix of Europe. Michael Schumacher will be with Ferrari for an estimated $48 million over 2 years. He will also have a new fuel company. Shell returns to Ferrari for the first time since 1973, displacing the Italian Agip company. Flavio Briatore at Benetton has Jean Alesi for the next 2 seasons. In a week's time, he will announce who will be his number 2, possibly Rubens Barrichello from the Jordan team or Heinz-Harald Frentzen, but he will have to pay Peter Sauber $2 million to buy out the German's contract. Perhaps the most underestimated driver in Formula One, Mark Blundell, apparently is not in line for a seat in Formula One next year, but he may have some opportunities in IndyCar. The French tire company Michelin has had their competition's man, Pierre Dupasquier, at most of the recent Formula One races. Will we see a tire war between Michelin and Goodyear next year? Pirelli dropped out of Formula One back in '91. Michelin may join next year. Gerhard Berger says he'd be delighted to stay at Ferrari, but he does not want to be number 2 to Michael Schumacher. He must get equal number 1 status, and that is not likely to happen. Johnny Herbert may not be with the Benetton team next year, but this weekend, team manager Flavio Briatore says Benetton will keep Johnny Herbert in the car throughout the end of the '95 season. And finally, the big surprise, Alain Prost, the former 4-time world champion who said he would not sit in a Formula One car since the death of the late Ayrton Senna, has had a seat fitting at McLaren and will test for the team beginning on Friday at Silverstone. The on and off rain has given us a very interesting starting grid. We'll get to that in a moment. As you look at Mika Salo, Derek Daly is with me as ever, and it has been a crazy weekend, Derek.
And mainly because changing weather conditions always makes things so much more difficult here at Spa. Now, some of the drivers that are unemployed at the moment need these races to impress future employers. David Coulthard, probably one of those drivers who has missed his first golden opportunity. Remember last year's golden opportunity, Rubens Barrichello, when he bagged pole position, impressed everybody? Well, this year Rubens is looking for a new team to show his true superstar potential. Johnny Herbert, another one that looks at the monitor to see where his name appears. He doesn't yet know where his name appears next year. And Mark Blundell has to be the suitcase Jake of Formula One, simply looking for stable employment. Friday dawned wet, plenty of umbrellas. Huge crash for Johnny Herbert, destroyed the Benetton monocoque, missed Friday's qualifying. This man didn't. And in fact, on Saturday morning, there was 5 minutes of precious dry time, and Berger again took advantage of it to grab the pole he sits on this morning, locks the brakes at the end of the lap down at La Source hairpin, kept the engine running. His teammate didn't do that. When he spun, John Alesi had to get a push from the track marshals, and then the world champion got it all wrong. A huge crash straight into the crash barrier.
But it's going to be entertaining tomorrow.
Yes, indeed, it will be entertaining. Have a look at the qualifying shuffle here. Look at the names that improved over Friday. Herbert, Hakkinen and Blundell. Herbert in particular from last to fourth. But look at some of the star names that have dropped all the way to the back. Schumacher down to 16th from second, and Damon Hill on the outside of the fourth row.
It is an interesting starting grid. You're looking at live pictures of the starting grid here at Spa-Francorchamps as we are just minutes away from the green light in round 11 of the Formula One World Championship for 1995. And this should be a most interesting race as the reigning world champion and points leader tries to come from the middle of the pack to take a victory here in Belgium. This ESPN Speed World presentation is brought to you by the new Toyota T100 Extra Cab. More room, more power. It's the Toyota of big trucks. And by Texaco Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Take it to the star. We'll be back to a cloudy day in Belgium in just a moment, live. Stay with us. Welcome back to Spa-Francorchamps, the Belgian Grand Prix. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. On this rainy day, we have a huge crowd on hand, which is surprising given the weather and the fact that tickets for this event, general admission tickets to go sit in the grass like that, start at about $240 US. Here's a look at the driver points coming into this 11th round. Michael Schumacher with just an 11-point lead over Damon Hill. Jean Alesi missed a great opportunity to score points 2 weeks ago in Hungary. David Coulthard, Johnny Herbert, and Gerhard Berger round out the top six. They are basically the only men with a shot at the title. In the Constructor Championship, Benetton Renault leads the defending champions from Williams-Renault, and Ferrari in third in what is basically a three-team fight for the all-important Constructors title. As mentioned, the on and off rain in qualifying has given us a very interesting starting grid. Let's take a look at it. On the pole, setting out on his 36th birthday today, Gerhard Berger, the 11th pole of his career, averaging 134.294 miles per hour. Starting alongside his teammate, Jean Alesi, an all-Ferrari front row for the first time since Monza last year. Row 2, Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren Mercedes. Best qualifying performance for that car, the driver equaling his best ever. Johnny Herbert, who crashed on Friday and did not take part in qualifying, came back with a great run on Saturday for Benetton. Row 3 will be David Coulthard of Scotland in the second Williams-Renault. Make that the first Williams-Renault in this field. He'll be starting alongside the forgotten man, Mark Blundell, with another great performance for McLaren Mercedes. Row 4 will be Eddie Irvine of Ireland in the Jordan Peugeot, starting alongside Damon Hill with another mysterious spin in Saturday qualifying, did not improve. On row 5 will be Olivier Panis of France in the Ligier Mugen Honda with a new tweaked-up Honda engine this weekend. He'll start alongside Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany in the Sauber Ford. Row 6 will be Mika Salo of Finland in the Tyrrell with Yamaha V10 power, alongside last year's pole sitter, Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan Peugeot. Row 7 will be Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the second Ligier, alongside the second Sauber of Frenchman Jules Bouillon. Row 8 will be Ukio Katayama of Japan in the Tyrrell, and Michael Schumacher, by far the world champion and points leader's worst qualifying performance, electronic gremlins in the car after his big Saturday morning crash. Row 9 will be Pedro Lamy of Portugal in the Minardi and the footwork heart of Japanese Taki Inoue. On row 10 will be Luca Badua, Maverick from Italy in the Minardi, alongside the footwork of countryman Max Papis. Row 11, Andrea Montermini of Italy in the Pacific, next to the 40 of Brazilian Roberto Moreno. On row 12, Giovanni Lavaggi of Italy in the second Pacific, next to Pedro Diniz of Brazil in the second 40. In the morning warm-up, order was restored. Alesi, Hill, Schumacher, and Coulthard, the four fastest in wet conditions. Derek Daly, let's talk about this great racetrack.
And you can see from these pictures of the warm-up lap that this is one of the finest, one of the very best, exciting, even exhilarating. This year features the return of the Big Dipper, Eau Rouge. You see the arrow there pointing to Eau Rouge. Remember the chicane of last year? Well, now Eau Rouge is back. Some of the other unusual features of this racetrack is the bus stop chicane. Yes, in real life, it is a bus stop. Also, the La Source hairpin, where there has been lots of trouble all through this weekend's practice and qualifying. there are very, very narrow pits here. An interesting driver quote came from Rubens Barrichello. He said, "If you do not hold on to your heart at this racetrack, it will come out of your mouth." That gives you an idea how exciting this racetrack here at Spa-Francorchamps is.
There is the corner down at Stavelot, where world champion Michael Schumacher had that huge crash on Saturday morning. There's a good look at it from Schumacher's car passing the point of his impact. Now, this is a part of the racetrack that used to be public roads. Mika Hakkinen now chauffeuring you through Blanchimont. Just a flat-out left-hander with very little runoff on the right. A slight gravel pit and then the tire wall. The sky's looking very cloudy right at the moment, but it appears that we will stay dry. We'll keep our fingers crossed. It is a cool day with a strong breeze. The humidity is quite high, but the chance of rain is 40%, we are told, and decreasing throughout the race.
And the Ferrari team, we see them here, want it to rain because this car has proven all weekend to be better than everybody else in damp and in wet conditions. And Alesi, of course, confirmed that again this morning by being fastest in the wet weather conditions of the morning.
Now, the start here at Spa is always a bit problematic. The cars are arranged around a corner. The faster cars toward the middle of the back of the pack will arrive at the start-finish line at a greater speed than those at the front who are trying to accelerate. Everybody will be up through the gearbox and then hard on the brakes for the right-hander at La Source. At the far right of your screen, Michael Schumacher pulls into the number 16 starting spot. He definitely has a day's work ahead of him. Now, the field is about in place, and all Ferrari front row. Interesting position on the right for Jean Alesi. Cocked it over toward the driver's right. Berger toward the driver's left. Here comes the red light and then the green. Huge tire smoke from Berger, getting away very slowly. Hakkinen tried to go by, but he blocks. Johnny Herbert dives into second behind Alesi as they head into La Source. Challenge into a Rouge. Side by side, Herbert and Alesi.
Herbert was so brave, tried to pull one over Jean Alesi, but there was nothing he could do but back off. A tremendous start. Here comes Berger.
Two Ferraris on the left. Herbert trying down the right side into Lecombe. Did he overcook it? Almost, but he makes it and takes the lead. Johnny Herbert in the lead for the first time since the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where he won.
Oh, this is great stuff. The horsepower of the Renault V10 faster than Ferrari. Look at Mika Hakkinen. Tries to come down the inside of Berger. There's Damon Hill, or David Coulthard.
44 laps of racing scheduled, but everybody wants the lead on the first lap. Now plunging steeply downhill toward the double left-hander, the very high-speed Pujol corner.
Road racing at its finest, absolutely flat out, 185 miles an hour down to Blanchimont, on the run down to bus stop where they reach 195 miles an hour in qualifying.
There is David Coulthard, the young Scot, who knows he does not have a drive in this Williams car for next year. Will he be the next man at McLaren? Who knows? Once again, back up at Lecombe.
And Herbert does it the hard way, goes round the outside, locks up the right front, takes the line from Alesi, who just bobs and weaves under braking, trying to hold off his teammate, Gerhard Berger.
But Alesi gave up the corner when he had to, and that's what road racing is about. Now, into the bus stop chicane for the first time. There is Michael Schumacher just entering the corner, running with Mika Salo in the Tyrrell just behind him, and then Jules Bouillon in the Sauber.
Down to the hairpin, exit in the hairpin. There are two distinct different lines. Look at Schumacher down the inside of Barrichello.
And we have a spinner. That's Hakkinen, I believe, has spun the McLaren Mercedes. And you'll have to wait till everyone gets by. Assuming, no, now he has stalled it, it appears.
It's exactly what we saw in practice and qualifying. Down the inside, they spin. Johnny Herbert's under attack. Wheel to wheel.
With Ferrari flags waving in the grandstand. Oh, I can't believe Belgian TV has cut away from this battle. Alesi takes the lead at Lecombe.
Somebody just whacked the Belgian director over the back of the head because he just cut away from the most exciting battle on the racetrack. Berger tries to come down the inside.
This is the Rivage corner, very steeply downhill here. You see the messages on the racetrack painted overnight by the fans, many of them saluting Ayrton Senna. Another look at Alesi's pass for the lead.
Down the inside, wheel to wheel. Forces the issue. Johnny Herbert has no choice, has to back off. So the V12 had the legs on the V10 on that run down to the S's.
There's Gerhard Berger, the most experienced driver in Formula One with 178 starts, celebrating his 36th birthday today. Is this the twilight? There's the man who could tell you. Jean Todt, who runs the Ferrari team, and there is Mika Hakkinen, who will go back to Ron Dennis and say, here's what I did.
And we just mentioned the difficulty people have exiting this corner. He also almost takes David Coulthard with him. But Hakkinen simply gets the power on too fast, too quickly on that outside line, loses grip, and around she goes. So that's not a good start for McLaren, who incidentally at Suzuka this weekend finished first and second in the Global Sports Car Championship. So a good day for the sports car.
Coulthard going down the inside of Berger, looking for third spot. Oh, Berger comes off that runoff at top speed and holds him back.
Down to Eau Rouge. You got to stay close. David Coulthard looking for a contract for next season. So difficult to follow people closely through Eau Rouge. Lost a little bit of time. Coulthard doesn't have the draft.
Alesi drawing away just a little bit. 2 laps complete. Michael Schumacher has moved from 16th to 10th, and we'll follow his progress through the field. Let's take another look at what happened to Mika Hakkinen. It's worth noting that that runoff can be very, very slippery. It is not a part of the public roads.
And he takes the wide line, which is a first or a second gear corner, spins to the inside. David Coulthard sees what goes on, does a 90 right to the inside. Luckily, there was enough room there. And that is part of the public roads here that they use at Spa-Francorchamps. There are 2 distinct surfaces here. Public roads are more abrasive, and the permanent racetrack is a smoother surface, which is in the wet, has been treacherous all weekend.
There you see the Ardennes forest through which this racetrack is carved. There has been racing here since virtually the turn of the century, organized on this circuit of roads since about 1925, when it was an 8-mile loop, absolutely majestic, including the scary Masta Kink. Talk about that a little bit later on. Right now, let's take another look at the start of this race. Gerhard Berger on the left, a terrible time getting away.
Watch Mika Hakkinen. He realizes he's faster. He gets blocked by Berger. Johnny Herbert, a great run. See Schumacher down the back, sticks 2 left wheels onto the grass, and then decides to think a bit better of it and moves back into line.
Now, my point about that runoff is that it is a part of public roads, but it is not a part of the racing surface. You see, there's even a little bit of a gutter there just along the white line. As a result, it's used for parking vehicles, and there's a lot of oil and such out there. And it can be very slippery. There is Damon Hill up and over the top of the hill at Raidillon.
David Coulthard does squeeze by Gerhard Berger. Here it is again in replay. Down to the hairpin, under braking. When you grab the inside line, Berger had to give it up. It's first or second gear down here, depending on what gearbox you have in.
And there's Hill going down the inside of Berger for third. So Damon Hill trying to keep pace with his completely energized teammate David Coulthard. Coulthard in his first drive since it was announced that he will not be with Williams next year. He may have that little bit of extra anger in his driving today.
Another man who has anger is Mark Blundell. Here's a replay of the pass. Damon Hill simply comes down the inside. The Ferrari not that good under braking at this particular juncture. 2 corners, 2 passes. Mark Blundell hangs on there. Mark is now in 5th place. And Michael Schumacher is all the way up to 8th.
While the action has settled down for a moment, we'll take a quick timeout and return for more from the Ardennes Forest, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in Belgium. Alesi, Herbert, Coulthard, Hill, Berger, and Blundell, your top 6. Eddie Irvine, Michael Schumacher, Olivier Panis, and Martin Brundle round out the top 10. Back live at the Grand Prix of Belgium. In the foreground, Mika Häkkinen's McLaren Mercedes, and in the background, Jean Alesi's Ferrari as the Frenchman walks away again. We saw him come into the pits just as we went to commercial. While in there, the crew started poking around the rear of the car. They brought him back out, but his left front wheel was flying in the air. Here he is pitting in replay.
It looks as if there is something broken on the right rear suspension, allowing that right rear suspension to drop down. This was chaotic because they weren't even ready yet again for Alesi. We saw this earlier. But when he left the pit lane, the left front wheel was still bouncing off the ground, highlighting that right rear suspension potential problem. Of course, he pulled off, and Johnny Herbert and David Coulthard renew their battle of the British Grand Prix. And here's Coulthard, tries to come down the inside.
Two men arguably without a drive in 1996. Man, we have some people with fires lit under them this weekend in Belgium.
And he is fairly close now on this long uphill run to the S's. It's 195 miles an hour here. Is the Williams faster? It looks faster here. Oh, he goes outside.
Now who gets on the brakes first? Oh, Johnny Herbert locks him up and goes around. Coulthard was on the brakes first. Herbert too fast into the corner, but he keeps it going, dropping, I'd guess, 2 spots.
How do you get away with a 360 spin like that? Loses the lead, then loses second place to Damon Hill, who sits back and watches all the action go on ahead of him. And of course, Gerhard Berger sits back and says, I'm next to have Johnny Herbert.
Johnny Herbert lost 1 spot. He runs in third behind Coulthard and Hill in a Williams 1-2. Here it is again. Watch the car on the left.
Coulthard puts him under pressure. Herbert brakes too late, misses the turn-in point, locks up the rear brakes. David Coulthard says bye-bye. 360 on the grass. Watch Damon Hill go by. Johnny Herbert just dodged a major bullet.
So now it is a Williams 1-2, and without question, as you watch the replay from the nose of Johnny Herbert's car, and around she goes.
And watch David Coulthard. There he goes. Damon Hill probably has a smile to himself. But Johnny Herbert, under pressure, makes a critical mistake. One of the reasons, or perhaps that's one of the things that separates the world champion from Johnny Herbert. He's off the road again. And Blundell is stuck.
Herbert having an awful time with traction. Blundell kept the Mercedes engine going, but both will lose positions. There's Gerhard Berger, followed by Eddie Irvine, and Michael Schumacher now up into 5th.
Well, talk about your teammate making things difficult by qualifying so far ahead of you and leading the race, and then turning the tables to make things easy for you. Begin to pull out your opposition. Eau Rouge, down into the dip, drags your body down to the floor, then it goes uphill.
Well, I'll never forget watching Mauro Baldi and Jan Lammers go through their side-by-side in sports cars a few years ago. It can be done.
Bob, it's raining. It's beginning to rain. Eddie Irvine wipes his visor. Left of the picture. Herbert gets it wrong. Gerhard Berger escapes, and Mark Blundell gets caught in the traffic jam.
Once again through Rivage, going downhill. Word from the pits is that Jean Alesi, in fact, does have a broken rear suspension. And so the French Sicilian is out of the race once again, and his bad luck continues.
Right rear suspension, but a good day for Eddie Irvine, holding off the world champion. What a pressure cooker that will be for Eddie Irvine. Can he withstand the pressure and be mistake-free? Whoa, Michael has a poke down the inside.
I was about to say, if there's one guy who seems impervious to pressure, it is Eddie Irvine. He will not make it easy for Michael Schumacher to go by, a lesson that Ayrton Senna learned in Eddie Irvine's Formula One debut at Suzuka 2 seasons ago.
Irvine, a man who won so few races on his way to Formula One, and the Williams boys run first and second. David Coulthard, leading team leader. No, they don't. Yes, they do. First and second, Coulthard and Damon Hill.
Team orders would dictate that Coulthard, should these two continue to run 1-2, Coulthard must let Damon Hill by at some point to win the race and maximize his shot at the World Championship. Here comes Irvine and Schumacher continuing their little tussle.
7-speed gearbox in the Jordan. They use second gear down at the hairpin. Eau Rouge just taken in sixth gear. Sixth gear, imagine that, 188 miles an hour you approach it at. And then this long uphill climb. Seventh gear right here for the Jordan. All the way above 190 miles an hour and stand up on the brakes. One of the problems Eddie Irvine has had is when he stands on the brakes in this Jordan, they are so violent and so severe as the Benetton crew get ready for a pit stop, possibly for Johnny Herbert, but the brakes are so severe, it's actually lightening the load on the rear wheels and causing an imbalance under braking. Schumacher is all over the Peugeot.
Down the hill towards Pujol. What is essentially the infield section. This is the part of the racetrack that was built to cut the track from more than 8 miles in length to just about 4.3 miles as Formula One racing returned to Spa-Francorchamps back in 1985. Coulthard leads Hill. We'll be back live in a moment. Back live at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, one of the world's great racing circuits. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly with you on this Sunday morning. David Coulthard leads the Belgian Grand Prix over teammate Damon Hill, followed by Gerhard Berger, Eddie Irvine, and then this man, Michael Schumacher, who started 16th after huge problems in Saturday qualifying. He is now up into the 5 spot. Johnny Herbert, who has led this race but spun twice, is now 6th, followed by Olivier Panis, Mark Blundell, Martin Brundle, and Rubens Barrichello, your top 10. Then Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Mika Salo, Jules Bouillon, Ukio Katayama, Pedro Lamy, Luca Badois, Max Papis, Taki Inouye, Andrea Montermini, and Pedro Diniz.
And in fairness to Mark Blundell, who's running down in 8th place, he should be running where Eddie Irvine is running, ahead of Michael Schumacher, possibly in 4th place as Flavio Briatore looks on. But Blundell had to come to a standstill trying to avoid Johnny Herbert.
News, of course, this weekend is Michael Schumacher having confirmed he will go to Ferrari for an ungodly pile of money, estimated to be $48 to $52 million over 2 years. $1.5 to $1.6 million per Grand Prix, although that's probably not a good way to look at it because these drivers spend so much time in the cars that racing is really comparative chump change in their schedules.
The rain has now stopped. It was beginning to rain on that back stretch. We saw Eddie Irvine wipe his visor earlier. You see some raindrops on the camera lens. Changing conditions here all weekend, but Eddie Irvine is man to the task here at the moment. He is up to the task of holding off Schumacher. We saw Schumacher try to dive down the inside several times. This is the latest evolution. Peugeot engine. They ran it in qualifying first a couple of races ago. Now they race it. Unreliability has been a problem with the Peugeot engine this year. There's also a revised engine cover this weekend for the Jordan and new steering geometry, which is trying to make this car more user-friendly. Gary Anderson made a very interesting comment this weekend about the handling or the design of the Jordan car, saying the center of gravity was too high. I thought that was an unusual statement to make. Back with David Coulthard, bashes over the curbs. They're the only curbs you can use here at Spa-Francorchamps that will make you faster by straight lining those curves. Damon Hill securely in second. You see the time there, 4.2 seconds behind. Blue smoke from Schumacher.
Getting very impatient, running behind Eddie Irvine. There's Gerhard Berger in third, then this battle for fourth. About to turn through La Source, named for the spring that runs nearby. Now this is the only section of the racetrack that remains public roads as the drivers struggle with that bit of runoff area. Right down here as they enter Eau Rouge, the road turns away right there. Up the hill they go. Now they are on permanent racetrack. Eventually that road will be closed and it will become completely a dedicated racetrack.
And you can see how well the Jordan handles through that Eau Rouge, that dauntingly fast, sweeping corner. The Jordan is historically good on fast corners. Look how gray that sky is becoming. Clouds beginning to drop over the top of the mountaintops. So the 40% chance of rain may in fact increase as these laps continue here.
Of course, rain was a factor in Michael Schumacher's first ever Formula One Grand Prix victory, which came at this racetrack 4 seasons ago. He was teamed with Martin Brundle then. Rain started to come down during the race. Schumacher picked the ideal time to make his pit stop, was able to jump ahead of Nigel Mansell and the rest of the field and come through to take his first career victory. And so began the legend of Michael Schumacher as Damon Hill rockets through Blanchimont at top gear. Here are the top 6 in points and where they run right now. The World Championship leader is 5th. Damon Hill is 2nd. Jean Alesi sadly is out of the race with a broken rear suspension. David Coulthard runs up front. Johnny Herbert 6th. Gerhard Berger 3rd. So all of the title contenders very much in the hunt in this race.
Oh, here we go. Down the inside.
Great outbreaking pass by Michael Schumacher. And once again, Eddie Irvine never wavered. When the corner was lost, he let him go.
That looked remarkably easy to me. I didn't even see tire smoke from Schumacher. That was the corner earlier. We saw the smoke. In car with Schumacher. It's a right-hand approach down the inside. And you said it, Bob. Once he got to the inside, Eddie Irvine was quite happy to give the corner up. And now Schumacher chases down Gerhard Berger.
Down the Kemmel straightaway. Rising slightly the whole way. This is a part of the original 8-mile circuit. As they reach Lacombe, right here, the course used to go straight on and then plunge downhill toward the little village of Masta, where the course ran between the houses at top speed. There is Michael Schumacher now in 4th spot as he continues to climb through the field. We'll step away for a moment and be back to Spa in just a moment. Back live at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium for round 11 of the Formula One World Driving Championship. Thus far, it has been a tour de force for this man, the Scotland, David Coulthard. Here's a look at our field summary. Coulthard over Hill, Berger, Schumacher, who started 16th, now runs 4th. Eddie Irvine, Johnny Herbert, Olivier Panis, and so on. Mark Blundell recovering after he got caught up and blocked in a spin by Johnny Herbert, one of 2 for Herbert, who has also led this race. Jean Alesi and Mika Hakkinen, the only cars out at this point. 44 laps scheduled. We expect the pit stops to begin shortly.
So Michael Schumacher chases Gerhard Berger, but the most impressive man so far this afternoon is undoubtedly David Coulthard, driving away from the field. Half a second a lap at least faster than Damon Hill. Now he is over 5 seconds up the road over Damon Hill. Exactly the type of statement he needed to make this afternoon. A man that has yet to confirm his driving intentions for next season.
A year ago, David Coulthard signed an agreement with the McLaren team, but the Contract Recognition Board and Arbitration Panel ruled that the Williams team had the right to Coulthard's services. So don't be surprised if David Coulthard becomes a McLaren driver next year.
Look how close this is now. Remember, Schumacher cannot be too brave here. There's the 2 different exit lines out of La Source hairpin. The Ferrari goes wide, and Benetton takes the inside line. Will these boys be teammates next year? It is possible, but Gerhard Berger is at pains to explain he will not go as a number 2 driver. He wants equal treatment with Schumacher. Then he's happy to drive with him as Barrichello peels off into the pit stop. You see the bottom right corner here. That is the time he is stationary in the pit lane.
This is happening on lap 12.
He was running in the top 10. He'll now be outside the top 10 until all these pit stops take a shuffle. Coulthard's in trouble.
Coulthard very slow. Out on the backside of the track. He is a long way from the pits.
Oh no, David Coulthard, a disaster. He had the fastest car in this race.
This is the downhill run to Pouhon.
He is a long, long way. The engine is running.
Nope. No drive. Might be a gearbox or something. Oh, what a disappointment for David Coulthard. But perhaps he has made his statement that he can qualify well and lead a Grand Prix race. And that moves Damon Hill to the lead, Gerhard Berger to second, And Michael Schumacher to third as Coulthard climbs out.
But Williams did not need this, and Damon Hill did not need this. Damon Hill needed David Coulthard to finish ahead of Michael Schumacher. And today it certainly looked as if he had the tools to do that. We do not yet know, we do not have official word yet of what happened to David Coulthard. We will bring that to you as soon as we get it, if we get it. Johnny Carwash moves over, lets Berger through, and Michael Schumacher.
Giovanni Lavaggi, who certainly raced here in sports cars. Now here's Johnny Herbert to make his first pit stop.
If they're on a two-stop strategy, this is the lap they start to come in on. So obviously Herbert has shown his hand.
Another good, quick stop. Taking on very little fuel, so that ensures that he will be back.
Oh, look at this. Look at this, Bob. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, tried to force the issue. That wasn't blocking. That was Berger taking a defensive line down the inside, saying to Schumacher, you're welcome to try and pass me, but you have to do it the hard way. Look at Berger's car move around. Look at this. Oversteer, oversteer. Little movements as he turns to the apex. Wide apex there. We watch what Schumacher sees. Flame from the exhaust, unburnt fuel. Now it gets faster.
From the outside. This is now a battle for second place in this race. Michael Schumacher, who's had trouble with his car all weekend, qualified badly on Friday, crashed Saturday morning. They repaired the car, but he had electronic problems in the gearbox Saturday afternoon and started 16th. Now down on the Stavelot Road at top speed. Damon Hill comes into the pits. His first of two stops. Let's see what the Williams team will do.
50 miles an hour looks so slow when you come down that pit road. Just over 8 seconds for Johnny Herbert. Depends how much fuel they put in. So he's already lost 2 seconds to Johnny Herbert. He was well up the road from the Berger-Schumacher battle. Berger peels in, Eddie Irvine's in.
And that will move Michael Schumacher to the race lead, completing his run from 16th. There is Schumacher downhill into Eau Rouge. I mentioned you can go side by side. We've seen it already today with Herbert and Coulthard. There is Damon Hill. There has been tragedy here at this racetrack over the years. Young German sensation Stefan Beloff was killed in a sports car accident trying to go side by side through Eau Rouge with Belgian Jackie Ickx back in 1985. Schumacher rockets downhill through Rivage.
And now the question is, what is the pit stop strategy for Michael Schumacher? Will he make 1 or 2 stops? If he's to make 2 stops, we expect to see him in this lap. If he passes, well then perhaps he will make a 1-stop race, which will make this battle here, first and second, Schumacher and Hill, very interesting again. Hill now has fresh tires, so he should have the speed to catch Michael Schumacher, and it only gets more interesting from here. Look how gray the day is. Look at those clouds. It was blue sky began to break through at the start of this race, and now it's beginning to cloud over more and more. How many millions has this man become worth since the last race? It is believed he asked Frank for $10 million for next year, and it's believed that Frank agreed to pay him around $4 million. That's still reasonable cash.
That blue probe, if you will, just in front of Damon Hill is put there for a reason. Hill 4 seconds behind Schumacher. The driver's head must rest under a line from the top of the roll hoop to the front of the bodywork ahead of the dashboard. Some cars do not quite make it, so they put that little stanchion up there to provide the clearance for the driver should the car clip over. Olivier Pagnino up to third as the pit stops continue. Oh, look at that blue smoke from the exhaust headers. What are they burning in that Mercedes?
Brand new tires for Mark Blundell, no time to bed in the tires here because there was so little practice time in the dry wet weather tires used mainly by Goodyear here. Lapping one of the 40 cars that looked like Roberto Moreno, waves to him. They are friends. Moreno, who was over at the New Hampshire IndyCar race last weekend, looking to move back to IndyCar racing. He has said all year long that is where he sees his future, and he wants to return stateside.
The 40 cars have a semi-automatic transmission that they hope to use in this race, but it acted up and they were not able to test it adequately, so they remain the only cars in the field using a manual shift. And at a track like this, Moreno says it really does make a difference when you have to take one hand off the wheel. Schumacher now lengthening his advantage over Damon Hill. He may be trying to open things up for a pit stop, or he may be on a one-stop strategy. That is a story yet to play out. Stay with us. Back live at the Grand Prix of Belgium at Spa-Francorchamps. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly. There you see the third and fourth place cars, the two Ligers for Olivier Panis and Martin Brundle, using Mugen Honda engines this weekend. The latest iteration of this engine, one of the few teams to use a new development of the engine. It's called the MF30 or 301H version B, and it is extensively tested. It is running third and fourth in the race right now. Good news for Ligier. They badly need some support as Michael Schumacher now pits. Lap number 17.
So Michael Schumacher, 9.1. Which is too long to be a one-stop and too short.
Right.
Too short to be a one-stop and too long to be a two-stop. Whatever I'm going to say.
Or words to that effect. At any rate, that raises the question, will Michael Schumacher stop again? He might have done those extra couple of laps, hoping to open up a big enough lead over this man, Damon Hill, that he could get in and out, but no chance. That would have taken probably a half-minute lead, and it never materialized.
I don't know whether that was long enough to get enough fuel in to finish this race. So right now, maybe we can surmise that Schumacher will have to make one more stop, as our leader here, Damon Hill, will have to make one more stop. Official word on David Coulthard's demise, a broken gearbox in the Williams as Barrichello makes his second stop with only 18 laps gone. So Barrichello obviously in trouble.
There's Damon Hill, the race leader, who will pair next year with Jacques Villeneuve in what should be a very interesting combination. Hill has had complimentary things to say about Villeneuve, who tested well for the Williams team.
But Bob, I think this weekend will highlight one of the problems Jacques Villeneuve will have. There was hardly any dry time for practice. There was hardly any qualifying laps at all done because it rained most of the time. So if Jacques Villeneuve had been here this weekend, he would have had hardly any time to learn the racetrack at true racing speeds. That will be one of the disadvantages Frank Williams will have taking a rookie driver to Formula One next season.
Villeneuve's present IndyCar team owner, Barry Green, had some interesting things to say about Villeneuve going to Formula One. Among other things, he said Villeneuve is going to have to get fitter to drive in Formula One, as you get a swooping view of Eau Rouge and up into Radillon and onto the Kemmel straightaway. Villeneuve's deal rumored to be as much as $10 million over 2 years, and there is also rumor going around that Formula One organizer Bernie Ecclestone may be footing a part of that salary.
Jacques had some interesting comments about the Formula One IndyCar comparison. Obviously the F1 car felt a lot lighter, more nimble, but he thought the IndyCar was faster down the straights. Of course, the IndyCar has 830 or 40 horsepower as opposed to the 720 or 30 that an F1 car now has. They are slower engines than last year, but the cars go faster. And look at that telltale mark on the side of the Ferrari. Lots of mud and dirt and sand on the side of that Ferrari, showing that Berger has been off the road in his chase to stay in the top three. He's not there at the moment after his pit stop. He's running sixth.
Here's a look at the pit stop comparisons. Michael Schumacher. Now, these times are from entering the pits to leaving, including the time the cars were actually standing still. Johnny Herbert, the quickest of the group, about 7/10 quicker than his teammate, Michael Schumacher. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we see the world champion Schumacher in again or not. And Gerhard Berger has his arm in the air. The Ferrari is slowing. One is already out, and this is more bad news for Maranello.
Well. The engine's obviously running. They ran a standard spec engine for the race. They did have an evolution, a development engine for practice and qualifying. You saw the raindrops there, but Gerhard Berger in deep trouble. It's all over. Both Ferraris are out as we see more and more raindrops begin to fall here on this 4.3-mile circuit at Spa-Francorchamps that Damon Hill currently dominates.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber Ford. Now, because this racetrack is so long, if it does start to rain harder, you can see raindrops there in the pits. You must make your decision to jump to rain tires very quickly because you don't want to make another 4-mile lap on slicks.
This morning in the wet warm-up, Damon Hill ran quite well. Look at this. Frentzen decides he wants to go on slicks. That could be a mistake if the rain, particularly on the back half of the circuit. It has rained on half of this circuit and been dry on the other half very, very often. Oh, look at this rain now beginning to come down. So Michael Schumacher now begins to get into a battle of wits with Damon Hill. And this may change everybody's pit stop strategy. Damon Hill in the rain this morning was the second fastest car. His comment afterwards was, this car felt very, very good. We saw the Williams in all sorts of trouble earlier this season. When it rained, they were in absolute shambles because the car was so bad. The car is much better now, but I'm not sure it's as good as the Benetton.
Gerhard Berger has made it to the Ferrari pits, and it looks like the engine cover is going to come off. That will mean an extended stop. And it appears that slicks are coming out of the tire warmers as Damon Hill heads for the pits. This would be, I would guess, in fact, I'm certain this will be a change to wet weather tires unless there is something drastically wrong with the Williams Renault.
Because of what you said earlier, Bob, the lap is so long. If you stay out too long, one of the Pacific cars, if you stay out too long, you lose way too much time if the rain begins to come hot and heavy, and Schumacher obviously decides to stay out.
Michael Schumacher moves into the race lead while Damon Hill sits in the pits. The plot thickens here in Belgium. We'll be back with more from the top of Eau Rouge in just a moment. Welcome back, and here is the story of the Belgian Grand Prix right now. Race leader Michael Schumacher is on slicks. Damon Hill runs second on wet weather tires. Half of this 4-mile circuit is soaking wet. The other half is relatively dry. Schumacher has opted to stay on his slicks. Here is Hill. This is the wet part of the track. This is where Hill should eat him up.
And what a gamble Damon Hill has now taken, because Schumacher still decides it is quick enough to stay on slicks. Hill goes down the inside. Oh, they're side by side. Side by side still.
Schumacher takes Hill right over to the curb in his efforts to stay in front.
Now it begins to dry out a little bit here, but Michael Schumacher is still in trouble. What's the line he takes? Tries to force Hill to the outside. Here's a replay. It is raining here on the back straight. They're at 175 miles an hour now, and Schumacher doesn't give the corner up. Side by side through the right-hander. They continue through the left-hander, and Damon Hill takes championship and backs off. Now, if it stops raining now, Michael Schumacher has made the correct decision. Damon Hill needs to get by. He needs to force the issue. Oh, he's on the outside and he doesn't pull it off yet. Hang on to your hat here, boys. This is a fight for the World Championship as well as a fight for this race win. Michael Schumacher making it so difficult on slick tires for Damon Hill, who's on wet weather tires.
Oh, carefully, Damon. Looks very wet here. Extraordinary driving by Michael Schumacher. Damon Hill must be careful, and this is through Blanchimont at tremendous speed.
This looks like a 4.7-mile lap for Damon Hill because he's all over the racetrack, and Schumacher blocks him again. This is defensive driving by Schumacher. He's blocking, but he's not changing his line in the braking zones. So fair play to him, and he still didn't make a pit stop.
Recall Monaco a few years ago when Ayrton Senna kept Nigel Mansell, who had the superior car, behind him for the entire race with this kind of defensive driving. Down to Eau Rouge now.
They have crashed together many times, Australia and Silverstone being two of the biggest. Here's where Damon Hill was faster. Will he know this time what Schumacher will try and do?
Keep in mind, Schumacher is doing this while dancing on this damp surface with slick tires. Once again, kicking up rooster tails on the Kemmel. They head for Lacombe. This time, oh, Schumacher's going to have to straight line Lacombe.
So he tries to block Damon Hill a second time and he loses out. Does what Johnny Herbert did earlier, except he kept the car straight. Now, Damon Hill needs to run for his life because the rain is beginning to ease. The rain is beginning to ease, so Damon Hill, if it dries out, will be in trouble on those wet weather tires.
Now, while all this is taking place, there was a big spin by Max Papis on the start-finish straightaway. The car is obviously out of the way. But even more important, Eddie Irvine came into the pits, and the car caught fire. Johnny Herbert very narrow. Oh, Pierluigi or is that Luca Badua? Badua has taken the front wing off the Minardi. Almost called it the Martini. Let's take a look at what happened to Eddie Irvine. There in the pits, Irvine came in, the car somehow caught fire. The crews went to work with fire extinguishers, and a couple of them almost backed up into that pit lane where Johnny Herbert very nearly clipped one of them.
And that is the second pit fire in successive races as we watch Michael Schumacher bounce across the grass, the curb, and then the escape road. Benetton were very lucky not to have a major pit fire. This is Schumacher over the grass, onto the escape road, and back on again in chase of Damon Hill. I mentioned Schumacher had a potential pit fire disaster at Hungary when there was a huge spillage in the garage area, in the pit garages, that luckily did not catch fire. Now what's going to happen? How wet will it be? How long will these rain tires last on the Williams? It was a good gamble so far. That's the arrows of Max Papis. He actually sat on the front straight in front of the pits and began to drive backwards up the racetrack before he had to abandon ship. Berger back out again and back in again.
More problems for the Ferrari.
The birthday boy about to call it a day. It's over. 36 years old today, and no birthday celebrations with a win. He said if Alesi can win on his birthday in Canada, I deserve a win here at Spa-Francorchamps. Well, you have to have the car.
Berger may go back to his family trucking business. He may go to touring car racing, which he has always said he wanted to do after his Formula One career is over. It may or may not be over now. There are the two Ligers, Panis running in the number 4 spot, and Martin Brundle, that is, somewhere else on the racetrack. We are back live at the Grand Prix of Belgium. There is Michael Schumacher, who, as you see, has now taken the lead back from Damon Hill. While we were documenting what happened to the pit lane to Eddie Irvine, Michael Schumacher was able to use slick tires on the dry parts of the racetrack to catch Damon Hill, who is floundering around now on those slick tires. And you see the crowd come to its feet, most of them German, cheering Michael Schumacher, running very close to his hometown of Kirpen in Germany. And there is Damon Hill having a terrible time.
He is in all sorts of trouble. When Michael Schumacher passed him under braking for the bus stop chicane, which was just before we came back, Damon Hill was all over the road under acceleration. So these wet weather tires now in the dry conditions, look at the steering wheel, may force him to make a pit stop very, very shortly to get some slicks.
There's the official running order. Schumacher, Hill, Brundle, Panis, Herbert, and Katayama. Behind them, Mark Blundell, Mika Salo, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and Pedro Lamy, the top 10. Rubens Barrichello and Jules Bouillon in 12th, the only other cars on the lead lap. Luca Badois pitting to get that nose changed on his Minardi. Now here you are riding with Michael Schumacher in the wet, coming up on Damon Hill. Now watch Hill slide through this corner.
That's where it happened. Hill is in trouble when he turns to the apexes. The dry line, and of course it makes him go right to the pit lane. He has to get slicks. It was a gamble worth taking, but when you play with Mother Nature, you just do not know what's going to happen. And it didn't stay raining long enough, and Damon Hill took the gamble, and it hasn't been worth it, because as he sits here, Michael Schumacher continues to build his lead. But Schumacher will have another pit stop to make, we believe. You can hear the rev limiter control that 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on the exit and the entry to the pit lane. But Schumacher, a commanding lead now with one more pit stop, we believe.
What a driving demonstration from Michael Schumacher, staying on those slick tires, holding Damon Hill behind him as long as he could. And now it would appear that gamble has paid off. You see the racing line there, damp offline, so Michael Schumacher will have to be inch perfect around most of this 4.3-mile racetrack. What a career he has had here at Spa. He's raced it 5 times, including his Formula One debut for Eddie Jordan, during which the clutch broke and he never got off the starting grid from his number 7 qualifying position. Since then, Michael Schumacher has been first or second every year, until of course last year when he was disqualified in the great plank incident, when he wore down the underbody panels that were to keep the cars at legal ride height. Mark Blundell hits the McLaren.
Wet weather tires to slicks. Another man who took a gamble to go on those wets. Sometimes it is worth it. Remember, it is the driver that gets to make the call. The team will ask the driver what the conditions are around the racetrack. So he is the man responsible for taking the gamble. And unfortunately, it was the wrong gamble so far for Damon Hill.
Damon Hill into the pits, back out again, and still runs in second place. Schumacher, Hill, Brundle, Herbert, Panis, and Katayama in the 6 points-paying positions with 27 laps complete of 44. We'll be back. We are back live at Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. Johnny Herbert has pitted for fuel and new wet weather tires as the rain is falling heavier here at the Grand Prix of Belgium. As usual, we got a great day of sports coming up for you here at ESPN at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Third round leader, Isao Aoki, leads the senior PGA golfers to the final round of the Cadillac Bank of Boston Senior Classic. Coming up later today, live at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. 16 laps remain in the Grand Prix of Belgium, and look at the visibility out there on the plunge at top speed to Eau Rouge.
So he failed to take the gamble earlier, and now he takes the risks. Because if Michael Schumacher makes a mistake on this very, very wet, long back straight here, he will regret not stopping for wet weather tires. His teammate Johnny Herbert stopped on this particular lap. Damon Hill is still on slick tires, decides not to pit. Made the mistake earlier, decides not to take the gamble this time.
Notice the speed differential into Eau Rouge when you're on slick tires on a wet surface.
And this is when you... Oh,
we have a safety car. Well, this is interesting. We have a full course yellow flag here in Belgium. And what a trick safety car it is. One of the new generation Porsches. Well, we are well past the halfway mark, and and the safety car comes out at an appropriate time to have a look at our Haviland race recap. Michael Schumacher, the leader, has led since lap 25. 9 lead changes among 5 drivers. Martin Brundle taking the scenic route through Les Sources. Out of the race, Mika Hakkinen. John O'Lacey broke the suspension in the Ferrari. David Coulthard lost the gearbox. No word on Andrea Montermini. Massimiliano Papi spun on the front straightaway and lost the fire. Eddie Irvine had a bigger fire than he wanted in the pit lane. Gerhard Berger with problems in the second Ferrari. Luca Badois has retired the Minardi after taking it through the gravel trap at a pretty good clip. Giovanni Lavaggi, Johnny Carwash also out of the race. Something not right about that golf promo. Don't the senior PGA players play 3 rounds instead of 4? Well, he must be the second round leader. Now the pace car driver filtering through the back markers, awaiting the arrival of Michael Schumacher to pick up the leader. Very dark overhead. Whoops. Ukio Katayama has taken the nose off of the Tyrrell in the wet. He was running in 4th spot. Ken Tyrrell will be absolutely discouraged by that.
Here it is here in replay. Under power. Gets it wrong. Watch the contact with the guardrail. Watch the guardrail bounce. That's what Armco barrier always does. It absorbs the impact. So the nose cone and left front suspension on Katayama's car, heavily damaged. Schumacher still not behind with the Porsche Turbo.
Well, this may take a while to get the field under tow. We'll take a timeout. There is Damon Hill. He runs in second. We'll be back live to Belgium. Well, we have an interesting situation here at the Grand Prix of Belgium. There is Michael Schumacher. The safety car has been on the track waiting for him to show up. Schumacher took advantage of the opportunity to pit under the yellow, as does Damon Hill running second to add the fuel that they will need to go the rest of the way. Schumacher did not change his wet weather tires. Hill will go for a new set of Goodyear Aquatreads.
And a problem with the right front on the Williams, so Damon Hill takes about 3 seconds longer than Michael Schumacher. And look at that rain beginning to come down harder than ever. But Michael Schumacher in a comfortable lead here. Here he is still trying to catch the pace car. The safety car is being used, we believe, to monitor the conditions.
There's the view from the Porsche. With no race cars behind him, he's been waving everybody by, so if there was any concern about the conditions, this is all a bit counterproductive, because everybody's been going rocketing by the pace car to complete the lap and fall into line behind it. There's a look at the order. 30 laps complete, 14 to go. Everyone pitting, everyone putting on the rain tires. This is a very, very fast racetrack, so officials being very cautious under the conditions to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to put the rain tires on. Now Schumacher finally catches up with the safety car as Pedro Diniz and Roberto Moreno in the 40 Fords.
Yeah, this is very confusing because it looks like it looks like the pace car driver was beginning to wave Schumacher by at one stage, but the light goes out.
Formula One drivers are not used to working with safety cars and full course yellows, so
Damon Hill now will catch up behind Michael Schumacher. Hopefully Roberto Moreno will see him and let him through. I don't know whether that's legal in Formula One or not. These safety cars are used so infrequently. This is all new territory for a lot of these drivers.
Look up the road towards Stavelot, down along past Blanchimont.
That was Damon Hill just into the picture, so he will at least make up a lot of time on Michael Schumacher. And as the rain continues to fall here, we are about to have a shootout with the 2 front runners at least full of fuel, and they can go to the finish.
Don't you know some of the rule book pages are being riffled in the pit lane as the teams scan the yellow flag procedures. Surprised Roberto Moreno has not gone by. Here's a look at our full field summary. 14 cars remain in the race. Roberto Moreno really needs to go around past the safety car and take his place in line. I don't know why he is staying there, separating the two championship leaders. See a lot of the cars out of the race, many of them crashing when the rains came down and turned this 4.3-mile circuit into an ice rink. Now there is Moreno, who still does not seem clear on what he should be doing, or perhaps he's being given conflicting instructions. But he should go back past these guys. There's Roland Brunsorada going up to the flag position. He is the chief safety delegate, the man responsible for organizing the race.
And that's not a red flag he has in his hand, that's a green flag, so we can presume that now that everybody is on wet tires, which is probably the reason they put this safety car out, they may get ready to let this field get back to racing. Schumacher and Damon Hill in the wet conditions this morning were within 0.4 of a second of one another, Hill being the faster.
So now the rain pelts down, and what are people paying for the right to sit in this rain and watch this race? $240 for general admission. You want to sit at La Source, it'll cost you about $285. You want to sit at Eau Rouge, $510. And if you want the e-ticket ride with a pit pass, be ready to cough up $1,400. Back live as the green flag waves over the Grand Prix of Belgium following a long caution, during which that yellow car of Roberto Moreno circulated behind race leader Schumacher in front of Damon Hill. Now Hill going way wide in these treacherous conditions, almost collects Moreno as Michael Schumacher rockets down the hill. Damon Hill in that Williams suffering terribly under these wet conditions. And look at the marbles offline.
And now we'll see who has a good car in the rain, because it is raining heavier than it was this morning, as heavy as it was during qualifying. And of course, very few people ran at racing speed during qualifying because there was no point. But Damon Hill now battling Michael Schumacher. He's within 11 points. Here it is, Panis. That looks like Panis. The action will be hot and heavy here because the speeds are so high. And aquaplaning is a problem here on a racetrack like this that uses so much public road.
If anything, the conditions have gotten worse since the safety car went out for 3 or 4 laps to check things out. Maybe ride along with the spinner. Out there close to the Sauber by the wall, on the power too soon, and around goes Olivier Panis of France. There's a look from the outside, the back of your screen. Big snap around for Panis. Fortunately, he was able to get it off the racetrack, or wound up off the racetrack, and collected no one en route. There is Damon Hill. Now we are told that Damon Hill is about to incur the wrath of the officials and will be called in for a 10-second penalty for excessive speed in the pit lane. Same back at you, pal. Your man is going to come in, and I would guess give up any hope he had of winning this race. But with a dozen laps to go, anything can still happen here in Belgium.
And the crowd just went berserk here as they saw it on the big screen TV that Damon Hill is on his way to the pit lane, that effectively finishes this race. Damon Hill makes his way down slowly. Pit lane speed violation. 10-second stop and go penalty. I hate this rule. You have to have rules or rules, I know that. I just hate to see races being destroyed with these 10-second penalties for pit lane violations.
See the crewman to the left helping the official count off the 10 seconds. The other crewman standing by with the starter in case the engine stalled. And it's clear sailing, it would appear, for this man, Michael Schumacher, at the moment, as he heads through Lecombe and onto the infield section.
Unless he makes a mistake. And why does he even need to push too hard now when he knows that Damon Hill's already been in the pit. So Damon Hill is a long, long way behind Michael Schumacher now, because that 10 seconds is not what takes the time. It's making your way down at 50 miles an hour and making your way back out that takes all the time. Patrick Head is irate about this 10-second penalty. He has gone to Frank Williams to scream in his ear, saying there is no way Damon Hill was over 50 miles an hour. There is no way he should have had that 10-second penalty. But it's too late now to complain about it, because the deed is done. And Michael Schumacher is way, way up the road, clear and plain sailing.
The new number 2 man, as you saw, is Martin Brundle, then Damon Hill, then this man, Johnny Herbert. Schumacher, Brundle, Hill and Herbert, Blundell, Frentzen, Mika Salo, Rubens Barrichello, Pedro Lamy, Jules Bouillon, the top 10. 9 cars remain on the lead lap as you watch Johnny Herbert.
So Johnny Herbert in for a good bundle of points here if he doesn't make another mistake. He could have won this race except for 2 very costly mistakes in the opening laps when he spun twice trying to hold off David Coulthard, and then down at the bus stop chicane. So he needs to hang on here if he's to help Benetton's quest to win the World Constructors' Championship this year. You really need to have 2 cars finishing on a regular basis, and Williams will only have 1 finish this afternoon because David Coulthard, who was the fastest man here, went out earlier with gearbox troubles.
There's Mark Blundell in the sole remaining McLaren in this field. Said to have at least 1 strong offer from IndyCar should he not land a Formula One drive next year. There's Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Peter Sauber has at least 1 more year on his contract and wants $2 million if you want to buy it out and take this man to your team. As you watch these pictures, our host broadcaster is the RTBF network in Belgium, but also on hand this weekend, a 120-person crew working exclusively for the Formula One Constructors Association under Bernie Ecclestone. Formula One is in the process of creating its own TV crew, so in the future, in the very near future, we may be seeing proprietary pictures from Formula One, doing away with the idea of a different host broadcast network in each of the countries that we visit during the year.
So this is 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, all in a line here. Blundell, Frentzen, Herbert, and Rubens Barrichello in the top of the picture there. Blundell trying to hold these people off. Blundell did a full race distance recently with that new modified Mercedes-Benz engine. Look down at the hairpin again. This is Damon Hill coming down the inside, and he spins it on the power too fast. So many times Lassour's hairpin has claimed victims this weekend, and Damon Hill yet again makes it even easier for Michael Schumacher to increase his lead here.
The engine note drops a good bit as the cars circulate more slowly in these conditions. Still clicking over at about 220, 230 individual cylinder explosions per second. There's Johnny Herbert.
The car that he crashed on Friday was not repairable. He did too much damage to the front of the monocoque, so he had to sit out Friday's qualifying, went from last all the way to the second row of the grid with a tremendous run in a car that Michael Schumacher even said was very unstable here in the high-speed sweeps of Spa-Francorchamps.
There's Martin Brundle tippy-toeing through La Source. He runs in second place behind race leader Michael Schumacher. He could easily have his best ever Formula One finish if he can stay in second spot. Right now, as you see, he is virtually unchallenged for that position. Here comes Damon Hill, still shown in third spot, but he is a solid country mile behind second place man Martin Brundle as he heads up Eau Rouge. We'll say goodbye for a moment and be back with more live from Belgium after this. We are back live at the Grand Prix of Belgium. There you see Johnny Herbert running in The 6th spot, getting off of the dry line because the sun, excuse me, that is Michael Schumacher. The sun is beginning to break through the clouds. You see the pictures lightening. So there is the chance that this track will begin to dry with about 8 laps to go in this race. There you see the running order. Schumacher, Brundle, Hill, Blundell, Frentzen, and Herbert in the 6-point paying positions. Coming up Thursday, the college football season officially gets underway here on ESPN. CFA primetime. The defending national champion Nebraska Cornhuskers taking on Oklahoma State. The Cowboys trying to come back from a dismal season last year will be coming your way live at 7:56 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:56 p.m. Pacific. CFA premiere for 1995 here on ESPN.
This is for position here. Johnny Herbert and Barrichello. That is 6th and 7th. Herbert now in 7th. Barrichello in 6th.
Move Barrichello into a points-paying position. He was so cruelly robbed of points in our most recent race in Belgium. Recall that he was running in the top 3. The engine lost fire off the final corner, and he dropped to 7th, which netted him 0.
Of course, the other retiree in Hungary was Michael Schumacher. Official reason for his retirement was failure of the mechanical fuel pump. We don't often hear of that on the Renault V10, but that was the official reason given for Michael Schumacher's departure from Hungary. Eddie Jordan looks on. He has been robbed so many times of championship points this year. In Germany with Eddie Irvine. Eddie Irvine was potentially a top 3 runner this afternoon before that fire. Moreno again moves over, lets Barrichello down the inside. Brazilian giving way to the Brazilian.
Is this man in the twilight of his Jordan career before moving on? Rubens Barrichello is said to be on the McLaren wish list as they rocket onto the Stabilo Road. We'll be talking about driver changes over the next 6 races. We'll also be talking about next year's Formula One schedule, which is being circulated in draft form with 18 different races on it to be chosen from to make up the 16-race schedule. Bernie Ecclestone is on record as saying there will be no more than 16 races next year. We know the season will start in Australia, in Melbourne on a brand new circuit on March 10th. We will go to Brazil on March 31st and Argentina on April 7th. Those 2 tracks going through complete repaving to correct deficiencies and get ready for the 1996 season.
And a new addition to next year's schedule at the moment is the Austrian Grand Prix. Yes, Gerhard Berger has worked so hard to get the Austrian Grand Prix back to a now modified Österreich ring. Used to be one of the most picturesque and one of the most spectacular to drive on racetracks in the world, the Österreich ring. Interestingly enough, although we had talk earlier on about a Grand Prix at Las Vegas, there is no U.S. Grand Prix listed among that 18 for next season.
So apparently the putative race in Las Vegas is on life support at the moment. It'd be good to see Formula One back in the United States. Michael Schumacher looking ahead at history, the opportunity to move into a tie with Sterling Moss on the all-time win list. And we see the Benetton crew with fingers crossed. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of Belgium. There's a man with his hands full. Damon Hill, who led this race at one point, made an unfortunate choice in timing his change from slick to wet weather tires. Since then, he has spun at least once. Right now, he runs in 3rd, while his title rival, Michael Schumacher, leads the Grand Prix of Belgium.
And he currently drives under suspension. A suspended suspension. He drove across the grass during qualifying yesterday. It was deemed as being a dangerous move, so he's under suspension, a suspended suspension. Look at Martin Brundle slide the Ligier, still using that development Mugen Honda engine, but slides the Ligier through the apexes here. Best career finish, 2nd. Twice he's almost been a winner. His countryman, of course, Johnny Herbert, was the fortunate winner this year at the British Grand Prix, and I'm sure Martin Brundle wishes that mechanical fuel pump failure to Michael Schumacher would happen again, because he has tried so hard for so long to get that elusive win. 138 Grand Prix starts he has as of today, and no wins.
It would be good to see Martin Brundle come up a winner in this year that we've seen so many surprise winners. Johnny Herbert and Jean Alesi picking up their first. Martin Brundle has done yeoman service in Formula One, and there you see just how slick it is as he tries to keep the car off that runoff. There's a Ligier team now run, and many say owned, by Tom Walkinshaw. A lot of questions in their future. They plan to develop a technical center in the United Kingdom, but they will leave the team at its base in Manicourt in France because of their heavy French-oriented sponsorship. The French very, very chauvinistic about their Formula One. They like their cars and drivers to be French-built, sponsored, and driven. Here comes Hill. Closing up just a bit now on Martin Brundle. Hill may not be out of the battle for second place yet as the laps run down here in Belgium. Whoa!
And Damon Hill has had his hands full as Tom Walkinshaw and Frank Durney look on. This will be the best result for Ligier since Tom Walkinshaw took over. And he did take over. He leads this team now. Tony Dow has moved from Valparaiso, where he ran the Jaguar program for so long. He now is the team manager for Ligier. But this man here, Tom Walkinshaw, who commutes every Monday in his own private jet to Magny-Cours to meet with the team members to give them the direction for the week, has been successful in every form of motorsports he has laid his hand on. And the Ligier team is his next personal project, to turn that into a world championship winning team.
An extraordinary businessman. I liken him to Jack Roush here in the United States. He has good relations with virtually every major manufacturer in the world and does research and technology work from his base in England for most of them, in addition to running racing teams for many of them.
And Tom knows that Martin Brundle will be under pressure from Damon Hill very shortly. He's losing about 3 to 4 tenths of a second per lap. There's Damon Hill now, closes up at the bus stop chicane. Martin Brundle, with so few laps left, will make it very difficult for Damon Hill if Damon Hill does get up behind him. Here's the chase. 5.8. Damon Hill, oh, he locks up the fronts. He locks them up again. Misses the apex completely. So the half a second that he gained in that lap, he has now lost it. So the wheels are off the wagon here for Damon Hill. He had a chance to win it, and now he's trying to hold on to the chance to just finish on the rostrum.
Oh boy, just hold on the rush through Eau Rouge. More dark clouds overhead on what has been an interesting and dramatic day here at Spa. We'll be back live in a moment. Back live in Belgium, here's the battle for fourth place. Mark Blundell got around Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Frentzen has been all over him, and now he wants to go by as they rush down to the bus stop chicane.
And this has been a great fight for the last half lap. They were side by side through the S's, but look at the time now between Brundle and Hill, down into 3 to 4 second range. So Damon Hill will catch Martin Brundle. Under replay here again, Frentzen comes down the inside. Blundell, usually hard to pass in the closing laps. Into the bus stop chicane, they slip and slide. So Frentzen takes fourth and moves Blundell down to fifth. But here's the chase here. The dark, murky day in Belgium. Martin Brundle knows he is under attack from Damon Hill. It's now down to 2.4 seconds at that particular split. And the rain is beginning to come down like cats and dogs again.
It is like that here in the Ardennes. The skies can open at any moment. Here's a look at our field summary. 14 cars remain running. Heavy attrition today, much of it sparked by the rainfall that sent cars flying off the racetrack. It led to an unusual and very confusing full course yellow flag as the field formed up in haphazard fashion behind the safety car. Damon Hill is third. He showed second on that field summary, but that's not correct. There is the second place car of Martin Brundle. who now has slower traffic in front of him. Another one of the bright yellow 40 Fords that will allow Damon Hill to close it up. Just a handful of laps remaining.
And you can still see there is enough grip in the dry sections here to make those carbon fiber discs glow red, particularly when it's such a dull, dark and grey day. But Damon Hill needs to be careful here because he's been off the road a few times this weekend. He went through the gravel trap on Saturday morning and he spun at the very fast Pujon left-hander on Friday, but he closes up under braking here as Denise is in the way and slows down Damon Hill. Martin Brundle gets a break.
Does he ever, as Damon Hill gets sideways, trying to get on. Once again, he's balked. Denise doesn't know where to go. Now Damon Hill will get by, but the damage may have been done.
1.8 seconds now has been stretched. Not much of a break, but look at Damon Hill. He drives to the outside, trying to find traction on that outside line. But Martin Brundle will give him the battle of his life if he's going to try and pass him.
We've got to take another break. We'll watch the battle and let you know how it turns out, if it does, in the next 60 seconds or so. Stand by for more from Belgium. We are back in Belgium. The battle for second place between Martin Brundle and Damon Hill continues as Michael Schumacher begins his final lap of this 4.3-mile circuit.
And Schumacher is all alone, 27 seconds ahead. But look at this. This is where the battle is. Martin Brundle has one more lap to try. Oh, he almost hits him to try and hang on to this second place. I don't believe he saw Damon Hill around the outside. It's a drag race. Mugen V10 versus Renault V10. Damon Hill looks to have a head of speed.
Oh, and Damon Hill cannot see clearly where he's going in this spray as they head for Eau Rouge. Up and over Radillon. How crazy can things be at this racetrack? Back in 1964, Dan Gurney was leading and Jim Clark was running fourth. On the last lap, Gurney ran out of gas as you watch Hill shoot down the outside to take second spot. That wasn't the end of the race, however. Martin Brundle tries to go back around, but he can't do it.
No contest. Martin Brundle's off the road. He was off the road on the grass, got back on again, so he tried to hang on to second place, but lost the drag race, and Damon Hill takes it, but Martin Brundle's still on the rostrum.
To finish my story, Dan Gurney ran out of gas, as did Graham Hill's BRM in second. Bruce McLaren in third suffered a flat battery. And as he coasted around La Source toward what was then the flag stand, Jimmy Clark, who had given up the race for lost, came screaming around the corner and went from fourth to victory on the last lap. Of course, Dan Gurney got it right a few years later in '67 when he won this race in his own Eagle Westlake, the only American driver to win a Grand Prix in a car of his own design and construction. Look at the gap Michael Schumacher has over Damon Hill on the Stavelot Road.
Dan Gurney, one of those magical names that has grown in the world of motorsports, and of course he continues that magic, now building the Toyota IndyCar program. But this man here will move on to Ferrari with another win under his belt.
And he may, in fact, most likely will join Alain Prost as the men who have taken the number one to that team. The season has a long way to go, but Michael Schumacher has put on another incredibly insightful drive, choosing his moments perfectly to change rubber, fighting Damon Hill when he had to. There is Hill to take second spot. Michael Schumacher picks up his 16th Formula One victory. Martin Brundle in third to finish the podium. And look how close Heinz-Harald Frentzen was in fourth. What a day for the Benetton team. They've been through a lot lately, and there is much more drama and perhaps heartache to come for them when Michael Schumacher leaves. But Schumacher magic has triumphed once again here in Belgium.
And he doesn't even make it all the way around on the slowdown lap. His teammate Johnny Herbert comes across the line in 7th place. Rubens Barrichello beat him out of that last championship position. In fact, Parc Fermé is right after La Source hairpin. Damon Hill goes over to congratulate Michael Schumacher. Are they friends? They look like friends to me.
Yeah, I know what he's telling him. Lucky devil. Schumacher says, what? What did you say? Well, don't believe everything you read about the animosity between these two men. Martin Brundle to shake his former teammate's hand.
Good day for Martin Brundle. He lost that second place on that last lap. He really didn't have a chance at keeping it with the drag race Damon Hill had with him down that long back straight. But Damon Hill picks up 2 more World Championship points by passing Brundle on that last lap.
The podium awaits for those 3 men. We'll let the extraction vehicle make its way over and take another quick timeout. We'll be back with more live from the Grand Prix of Belgium. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Formula One Grand Prix of Belgium, has been brought to you by Firestone, America's tire since 1900. And by Wagner, maker of quality power painting and decorating tools designed to make your job faster and easier. There is the podium here at Spa-Francorchamps. Schumacher, Hill, and Brundle.
So no matter where Michael Schumacher starts on the grid, no matter what tires he is on, no matter what weather conditions there is, and how many pit stops he makes, he still wins. You cannot stop this steamroller. It just seemed to fall his way. The gambles by other people went against them. And Schumacher's day got easier as the day went on.
Newly married, looking ahead to a future with the most famous team in the sport. Michael Schumacher, and you can see the frustration, I think, in Damon Hill's face. What do I have to do? Martin Brundle, happy to be on the podium with one of the really improving teams in Formula One Ligier. Here's a look at our final results. Schumacher, Hill, and Brundle, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Mark Blundell, and Rubens Barrichello fill out the points-paying positions. Johnny Herbert and Mika Salo very close together at the finish. Olivier Panis, Pedro Lamy, Jules Bouillon, and Taki Inouye. Those last 3 particularly with good races under the conditions. Behind Inouye, Pedro Diniz and Roberto Moreno finished in 13th and 14th, but both were 2 laps down and may not perhaps be classified as a result. On the left of your screen, Flavio Briatore, who has done so much good bringing the Benetton team to prominence. Now he must start over because he is losing the Schumacher magic for 96.
And no doubt there is a certain Schumacher magic because he seems to instill something unusual in that team, in the mechanics, in the engineers, and then he goes and performs. But it is delightful to see Martin Brundle up there. He didn't hang on to second place, but third place gives him that confident grin that he knows he did a good job. A man who Ligier say is a leader at that team.
As Tom Walkinshaw said, he will win you a race that you have no business winning, and perhaps today was one of those for Michael Schumacher. Flavio Briatore accepts the Constructors' Trophy. And those all-important points toward the Constructors' Championship. Let's take a look at the driver's standings following 11 of 17 races in 1995. Schumacher opens his gap to 15 points over Damon Hill. Jean Alesi sadly scores no points. David Coulthard, no points. Johnny Herbert moves up. Gerhard Berger, no points as well. It's looking more and more like a 2-man race for the 95 driving title. In the Constructors' Championship, Benetton Renault opens its lead to 10 points over Williams Renault, with Ferrari scoring no points today.
What a waste of good champagne. Briatore gets a champagne shampoo, and his eyes begin to sting. He doesn't look that impressed.
Interesting relations between the various characters in Formula One. There's a guy who could use a win, Martin Brundle. Of Michael Schumacher this weekend, Flavio Briatore said, "We can win with other drivers." He was asked if he would lose any of his engineering or design talent when Schumacher leaves. He said, "No, we have people in this team who are not motivated by money." And there you see them on the podium, enjoying the moments that they share here in 1995.
What a successful partnership this has been. How long will Schumacher's next partnership take to come to fruition? Interestingly enough, Schumacher said next year will be a building year. $24 million for a building year. I thought that was a strange comment.
Part of the crowd that gathered paying extraordinary prices to come to this great racetrack now will make their way back to their tents, to their cars. Maybe stop by the Laval Model Shop down in Francorchamps, one of the world's great stores for those of you who love to pick up models of racing cars. A good look from the top of Radillon as the rain now begins to fall very heavily. The Eau Rouge restaurant down there on the left. That is the valley through which Eau Rouge, the red water, runs. Our next stop on the Formula One World Championship trail will be Monza. However, the Grand Prix of Belgium will be coming your way in highlighted form on checkered flag, October 15th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then it will be perhaps the grandest of Grand Prix, the Grand Prix of Italy from historic Monza, changed to welcome Formula One. We'll be coming to you live at 8:50 Eastern Time. Final comments, Derek Daly?
I think it was a struggle for Damon Hill today. The momentum that he had having won Hungary was severely dented because he believed he had the car to beat Michael Schumacher today. It would have made the championship fight much more interesting. But he knows now it will be an uphill battle to beat that superstar.
We'll see you in 2 weeks' time, live from Monza for the Grand Prix of Italy. Until then, I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Daly. So long, everyone.